Well, thank you everyone for going in for the June board meeting today. Glad to be here and thank y'all for taking your time to be involved. First order, would like to ask for a motion for the minutes from last month's meeting. Anybody like to make a motion on that?
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. For our second action item, we are at the time where we are electing new officers, moving forward for the next year. We are advancing or moving Mr. Danny Gaines into the chairman role, where now we will have a vice chairman position open. So would like to ask if we have any nominations for that vice chairman role. Yes, Billy.
Absolutely. Be happy to.
Do I need a motion for that, or do we, okay, so.
The motion is on the
motion is
table.
that, so can I get a second for Mr. Pitcock to be the new vice chairman?
Second.
Okay, all right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I just personally like to say thank you, Kevin, for serving this year. So as most of you know, this was a brand new board except for Kevin. Kevin was our only remaining board member. And I asked him to serve as chair, and he has done that this year, and I really appreciate it. Because it's been an interesting year because we had a brand new board. Nobody really had ever served on this board. And so Kevin, I really appreciate your leadership and want you to stay involved. You're not off the hook. You're not off the hook for sure.
So you're still on the board, you're just rolling off chair.
That's right.
Yes, I will still be here.
That's right. That's right. Very good.
Just lose your parking spot.
Yeah.
That's right.
Chairman's per diem.
Well, thank you for being willing to serve and, definitely, appreciate that. Look forward to y'all's new direction here. So, all right, well, I'm gonna turn that action, agenda item number 3 over to Miss Stephanie. So,
Very good. As you know, the Office of Skills Development has funded our broadband training programs. And we have several different training programs, but one of our newest one is the network engineer programming that we have at UA Cossatot. So I invited Mr. Steve Cole, who's the president of Cossatot, and he's kind of been the leader of this. He came to me, and this is a program that we think we can replicate throughout the state. He's got some exciting things to share with you, so I'll turn it over to you, Steve, and let you introduce your team.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. I'll be as brief as I can. Can we stand here? Or you want us to stand up?
Wherever you want to stand.
Where?
There's a podium if you need it.
I don't think so. I don't. Oh, it has a clicker. Okay. I'm not gonna do the clicking, but Marty's gonna do the clicking, but I'll just stand here. And I know a lot of you, and it is good to be here, and I really love what you're doing. And I had just a little background about me. I've been at UA Casa almost 30 years. And along the way, I've served in a lot of different capacities. A lot of that has always been involved in workforce training. And I remember Lynn from another previous life when I was a state representative, and I served with Jane, our senator. I was served with Senator English. And so we did, and I thought we did a lot of good. And I thought we were in the earlier days of Workforce 2000. And so we saw how the pots of money went where they're supposed to go and all that. But when it comes to career education workforce, I always tell people our college, and I said this at graduation a few weeks ago, we're not here to provide you an education, even though that's the byproduct of what we're doing is a job. And that's why I tell our graduates, our job is get you a job. I mean, yeah, that education is part of it, and that helps you train and get the job, but we're all about jobs. And I think that's where y'all are. With career education workforce, because I mean, if we're going to fulfill the governor's plan and we're going to fulfill the UA plan and all those things that we have that center around workforce education, my feeling, and we had to talk about this yesterday, Tammy and I are actually working on a big Title V grant, and part of that is let's get short-term high demand training where it needs to be, and let's not spend 10 years trying to get someone a job. Let's spend about 15 weeks and get someone a really good job, or 4 weeks, or whatever that is. And that's what we started to do. And the whole genesis of this program actually started in this room. The roots of this program are in this room, because you go back 3 or 4 years when we sat around this table. Senator, you were at this table. Stephanie was at this table. Cody Waits. A lot of us were at this table sitting down with the leaders in broadband, even before BEAD funding was even a thing. And it's a thing that's here and is coming. And I understand that Senator and everyone said we have to work all that out. But our job is to provide the workers to fulfill that. But we sat around this table and we said, hey, we're going to need some people. Urban cable construction, they're big in this state. They said, we need people. Mr. Klausmeyer was here. We need people. All these people were at the table, all these corporate folks. And so we sat here, and what we did from that is we developed, at our college, we developed the aerial lineman program, because a lot of our broadband around the state is being strung up on the poles that either the co-op owns or SWEPCO owns or Energy owns, and they're stringing that fiber. That's what we do at our campus. We train those people, and that all originated in this room, and it was help funded by Commerce and OSD. And so we kind of unleashed that on the world, and we're still doing that and having great success with that, and with our industry partners. And so while we were doing that, at the time, one of our biggest local industry partners was Southwest Arkansas Electric Cooperative, because at the time they had some visionaries on that staff. That one of those is in the room, Marty Allen. So they had a visionary. They also had Jeff Tollett, who sat in this room. Jeff was a visionary. Jeff is now, he went to Connexon, but now Jeff and 3 other gentlemen have started their own broadband company that is servicing the United States. And that all originated with Marty's group. And then also at the time, their CEO, who went on back to Tennessee, back home, Dion, sat at this table. And so they had all these visionaries that really knew what broadband was all about. And that's why they created 4 States Fiber. And I'm personally on 4 States Fiber. We had 2 of our campuses on 4 States Fiber, because they were delivering a gig, unheard of at the time in our neck of the woods, a gig up and down, not just download speed. We're talking about upload speeds. And that's what they were delivering. And we're like, wow, this is like fantastic. Well, along the way, they're saying, hey, we need these kinds of workers. And then Luke Irvin with Urban Cable, who's been in these meetings before 3 or 4 years ago, he said, hey, here's what we need. So we tried to produce all of this, and we are producing that with the aerial lineman program. We're doing tower training at ASU 3 Rivers, and we're doing the boring and drilling at UA in Morrilton. And so we're doing all those things. Okay, so now fast forward just a little bit. As soon as we started that program, I kind of had this wild scheme, this harebrained idea. I said, hey, there's this federal grant that is available. Why don't we take this to the next step? Because I talked to Luke Irvin and Jeff Tollett with Connexon at the time, and they said, dude, we need aerial linemen. We need people to do those things and string up the broadband lines across the state. But what we don't have, and this is across the United States, Arkansas, United States, what we don't have are the people with the knowledge and the know-how to tie it all together. It's not enough to string the line, but that final mile, okay, how do I hook it to Steve's house? How do I hook it to Senator English's house? How do we network all that? That's what we didn't have. And we're listening to the Jeff Tolletts of the world and the Juniper Networks people of the world, who you'll see their name pop up in a minute. They're saying, this is what we need. So I said, okay, well, here's a grant. So Marty and I actually sat, we got together, Tammy and I got together. Tammy, by the way, I'll introduce her in a second. I'll introduce them now. Sorry, y'all, I try to go really fast. My wife tells me I talk too long. She says, write down your comments, you won't speak as long. But I have so much to say. I get excited about workforce training. I do. I've been doing it for a long time, and I love it. I sit on workforce boards myself. I do these things. I do what you're doing. Tammy Coleman has been with us as long as I have at UA Cossatot, and most of that time she has been our director of workforce training and continuing education, and that's what she does. She is all about short-term go-to-work training. That's what she does. I don't care if it's medical assist, phlebotomy, fiber optic engineering, whatever it is falls under her. And then, okay, so Tammy and I, we start working on this grant with our grant writer about fiber optic engineering. It's like, hey, we need this. Well, okay, so Tammy and I and some others sitting in the room go, well, yeah, we know we need it, but we don't know crap about it. So, hey, Marty, how are you doing? So call Marty. Marty's a friend. And said, Marty actually lives in Bismarck, Marty Allen, and I just told you what he did in his past, but he was with South Central Co-op, that lives in Bismarck, but then went to 4 States Fiber, and then went to the Diamond State Networks in Arkansas. So he has all this knowledge about this. We said, Marty, we're writing a grant. We need someone to help with curriculum. Okay, I'll help you guys. So he gets involved in this grant. And so we're writing the grant and following his advice on curriculum, which now has been developed to a 15-week curriculum. 15 weeks, go to work, big money, that's what we want. So Marty gets on board. Right before we need a letter of support, so we come up here to Commerce, sit down with Glenn Howie, and say, hey, Glenn, we need a letter of support. We're working on something big. You got it. And so we had all of this support. So we submit this beautiful grant. Didn't get it. Lee, not gonna stop this. I'm sorry, it's too good of an idea. So we go to Stephanie. And which is what we always do. We say, hey, Stephanie, we got this idea, man. This has got to work, because she really appreciates what we're doing with the aerial lineman, and we appreciate our partnership with OSD. And so we said, hey, here it is. This is our grant. This is the curriculum. And Stephanie goes through it and says, yeah, great idea. And so with OSD, Commerce, and all the other partners that we have, they help fund this, and they'll talk about that. But we were able to take that original grant idea from 2 years ago, and then with the help of Commerce and OSD and the others, to create this already in our first class, which you're going to hear about. And we think it's something that's really going to impact the state as far as getting this broadband out that final mile and things like that. So that's all I'm going to say. I just want to give you the quick genesis of how all this comes about and why we're standing here and what we're doing. And then Tammy, will you be next?
Well, I was gonna introduce Marty, but you've.
I am so sorry. Do you want to add something to that?
No, that's quite all right.
Okay, I just, this was totally impromptu. I'm sorry. Thought I'd let you guys know.
I would like to add a. few
Please
things,
do.
if I
Anyhow,
can.
but y'all, that's this, but now Tammy's gonna tell you a little bit more about it, and then we'll get to the real meat of the thing when Marty gets up here. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a few minutes, and on behalf of the students that we have at the college now, they're very excited to have this opportunity, and the future students that are coming in future cohorts, and give a special thank you to Glenn and Stephanie and Kyla for your special work on the project. Really appreciate it. Marty, you want to tell them more about the project?
Absolutely. Well, good morning, everybody. This is a program. I am so excited about this. I never would have imagined we are where we are right now, but I appreciate being part of the team and getting this going, because it is something. I come from the industry. I know what the challenges are, and I'm gonna talk through what we're doing here in just a few minutes. But it's a 15-week program, and it's part of the Arkansas Fiber Broadband Academy, which is a partnership between the Arkansas Community Colleges, Skills Development, Office of Skills Development, and the State Broadband Office. It's funded by the Office of Skills Development, and it's free to the students, 100% free to the students. And we limit it to 10 students for the first class here. We want to make sure they understand the fiber to the home, fiber to the business, whatever. It could be FTTH, FTTX. I mean, it's a lot of different fiber to whatever's out there, but we're giving them a broad foundation to grow from. Terminologies, concepts, outside plant, all this kind of stuff. And we were requiring one industry certification. Keep that in mind, because I'm going to show you something in just a little bit. This I never would have imagined. One industry certification required to graduate, and that was the Calix Broadband Engineer Certification, which is a 4-hour exam that they were going to take. More available, you'll see that. They get individual toolkits, which include electronics, OTDRs to test fiber, light meters, multimeters, hand tools, over $1,300 to take with them on successful graduation to their career. And it's pretty awesome. They get classroom, hands-on training. We have a lab built out. I'll get a picture of it in a few minutes, and we have virtual labs as well. Job placement services are available to them. We're working with them on developing resumes, doing interviews, practice interviews, panel interviews. All of that will be coming up here in the next few weeks. Supportive services available to qualify to help them out with gas and travel. And it's at the U of A Cossatot. Okay, U of A Cossatot, Southwest Arkansas, just a few miles south of DeQueen. At the corner of Highway 71 and 371 in downtown Wattsburg.
We call it God's country, where we're from.
Yeah, this is the old middle school, which the school, has refurbished. It's beautiful. Kept it to the time period. See the old library, that's the old middle school library. We've converted it now into a high-tech broadband lab. And that is, a lot of that is the donated equipment. We had funds to purchase most of it, but when vendors started hearing about this, they said, we want to help. And so they started, what do you need? What do you need? Now, job opportunities for these students keeps growing, but they can you need broadband providers, engineering path, operations path, management path, they can go a technical path. Hopefully, if they wanted to go on and do their bachelor's degree, that we could work out an paid internship program with a local provider somewhere close to the university. I've started 3 different internship programs through different companies, and they've been very successful. And I would like to see that opportunity for them as well with vendors in technical sales support positions, because they understand, they can help go sell it, talk about it. We don't require background checks or drug screening for the class, but we do make sure they're aware on placement that will be a requirement. This is the first class. We started April 14th. We're now into 9 weeks, and we'll finish up with a celebration day on July 28th. And then the next classes, they'll be scheduled one for this fall, and then they'll fall the spring and fall semesters. Prerequisites, pretty stringent. Minimum age 18, valid driver's license, basic computer skills, and I mean basic computer skills. Our 15-week program, I know it's a little bit hard to read. We start out week 1 with just the history of the broadband, work environments, kind of what to expect, networking concepts, TCP/IP v4, v6 addressing, just like a phone number, every device has an IP address. That's how they communicate. Knowing how to manipulate those, we get into decimal to binary to hexadecimal numbers and conversions and all of that. And these students were like, whoa, but they got it. They got it, and they're having fun doing that. So we talk about outside plant. We built the lab. They actually helped build the lab, get the rack the equipment, connect everything up, power it up. We've built Ethernet cables, fiber optics, show them how to fusion splice fiber optic cables. So we've been practicing that in the class. 2 of our big partners, Calyx and Juniper, gave us 100% free access to their online educational material, instructors, and vouchers for certification, so the students don't have to pay for any of their tests. Calyx has provided 1 instructor, actually lives down the road from me in Bismarck. He's been there for 2 weeks. He'll be back next week for a 3rd week, which is just amazing. And he's been very helpful in teaching them how to set up the electronics that run over all this fiber we put out there, how to support it, how to turn up services, how to troubleshoot it. And Juniper does more of our routing on the infrastructure, keeping all the components talking to one another. They're in a class right now. It's an online class, self-paced, and each student with free access right now, had they been in a job somewhere and wanted to take this class, it's $4,000 just to enroll for that one week class. So we've got $36,000 worth of training we're doing this week, which is just amazing. We get into network security, placement prep, certification, prep, and then the certification testing. This is our Locksburg lab. And then our virtual labs we have at Calix and Juniper. For some reason Juniper didn't show up there, but that's all right. Our virtual or logical lab, this is everything in the equipment. These are just different scenarios that we can hook up, test, troubleshoot, and mimic real world experience out there. We're also working on a live connection with 4 States Fiber into Locksburg so that we can get a 1 gig connection and have access to cloud environments with Juniper and Calix as well. Program successes. Remember I said we needed 1 certification to graduate? Today they have 787 total badges and certificates, digital badges. Those are online courses they've gone through, modules that they completed. Each one of them have a little test that they go through. But the big ones are the ones on the right. The Calix ex-officio E7 specialist, Calix Wi-Fi technician, Calix broadband engineer, and the one that we're working on now is the Juniper Juno certification. So they've already met their graduation requirements, as long as they show up for the rest of the 15 weeks. But in the middle, the partner donations. And that number has actually changed, Tam. It's more in line with around $170,000 now. And it's still going up. People are still wanting to donate and contribute to the program. So this is what I'm really excited about, because these students have just exceeded everything I ever thought they'd do. No network background whatsoever, very basic computer skills, and they're turning into network engineers quickly. And it's been amazing to watch that transformation, watch their eyes light up and see the possibilities of what they can do. They keep telling me, I never knew I was this smart. And I said, you got it, you got it. But this is our class. Just different pictures of what they're doing. Some of the toolkit, actually working on the lab, splicing fibers, doing IP addresses, binary math. So what are the next steps? Just promoting the program, looking at collaborative opportunities, having employers hire the graduates, and we're bringing in different industry professionals, employers, come in and just have a conversation with the students, do a Q&A. They have no clue what's in front of them as far as the work environment and what's going to be expected. So they're getting a good taste of that from people who have come up through the industry, figuring out what they need to be prepared for. And when they walk into a job with this, we're accelerating their return on investment, time that they're productive by months. And as well as the training and certifications, employers don't have to pay for that. We're getting it completely free. Juniper and Calix is also going to let us extend that for 6 months to a year after they graduate, that they'll still have access for online training free to them, that they can continue their certification and training for advanced classes that they need to take. And then the dream team. I started out with a few people who wanted to partner and get involved, and it really grew. These are the people who have contributed to this program, the success of this program. You know, electric cooperatives, telephone cooperatives, vendors, and I keep having to make them all smaller and smaller, but we'll get them all up there. So that's my contact information, and if you have any ideas or questions, I'll be glad to answer those. That pretty much completes what I wanted to tell you about today.
I'd like to hear a little bit about the students. This is the initial program, correct?
Yes,
So numbers, demographics, recruitment,
Absolutely.
what does that look like?
we got 9 students. We had 10, one backed out the week right before we started. I got 2 high school students, Horatio superintendent. We overlapped their end of year by 2 weeks. Horatio superintendent and them worked out where these 2 students could start. Which we're really appreciative of. So I got 2 high school students. I got 2 grandmothers. I got 1 parolee. I got a veteran, disabled veteran. And then, people have been, without a job for a little while. They are so hungry to have a chance at a real career, change in their lives. And, they're from, Nashville, Horatio, DeQueen, down toward Ashdown. They're all from that area right there. And so it's reaching a demographic I think we never would have tapped into. Because these are folks that aren't necessarily going to go into a 4-year degree or have a chance. I have one girl is the first in her family to ever complete high school. So that's the demographics. So, yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
Job opportunities in Southwest Arkansas and the number of students that are free right now. Are there plenty of job opportunities there? And if so, are there expansions upon that 10 to go to 15 or to 20? Are y'all capable of that?
We could go higher on students if we need to. I think that would be doable. I wouldn't get any more than 15, 12 to 15. Job opportunities right now, I think with the B funding, people are kind of on hold. But there are some, due to attrition, retirement, changing jobs, there's some I know about that are about to open up in that area. Some of the students want to travel. They want to get out of Locksburg, go see the world. So some of them want to travel, but a good number of them want to stay right there. Vendors and employers have already reached out to a few of them and watching them and kind of setting up a plan for whenever they graduate, maybe bring them on board.
And so that's my encouragement. It sounds like a great thing. It just seems how do you get more students involved, more people able to do that?
Yeah.
It's not criticism of it.
Yeah.
It seems like a good thing to expand upon in time.
And Kevin, if I can piggyback on that, our thoughts, and that went back to, several years ago, when we sat in this room for the aerial alignment and the directional, boring and all that. We were front running all of it, that's what industry needed. Well, then we, obviously we got hung up on B. And I think that's going to resolve itself. And I think that's where, pick one, Cox, Kinetic, name them. They're all, because that last mile out in rural Arkansas is kind of hard, to make financial sense. So they'll wait on that. But, in this program, talking to Luke Urban, and we actually patterned our aerial alignment program after Urban Cable Construction. Jed Toll and I flew out there to Kentucky. And kind of saw what they were doing. And at that time, Luke and them were busy in the state. Well, right now they've kind of tamped that down, because of the funding issue. But once that revs back up, they'll come right back to it. But when it comes to this, when we're getting ready to do this, and they're one of our big supporters, and I just called Luke and I said, hey, Luke, we're thinking about this. And he said, Stevie said, I can hire 200 of these right now. They're not in Arkansas, but I can hire 200 right now because they work all over the country. And so the demand is there, and I know that demand, I think we're front running that demand comes back as soon as all of that opens back up. Because these guys, right, I mean, Lynn, you're with, Cox, just waiting, for this to bust loose, and I think then you're gonna see the trucks everywhere. And I think these students will be ready for that. That's what we're waiting on anyway.
Yeah, one thing we also have noticed is we have not found another program that gives them this much foundation and exposure to the industry. There are other programs that are similar, but they're very focused on certain aspects of it or very technical pieces of it. but not building a good foundation. And being able to get the certifications like this. Historically, employers always want 5 years of experience or degree or something like that. We need to kind of change that mindset just a little bit in that we're accelerating it. And they're already coming out with certifications. They've got experience. They don't necessarily need 5 years of experience. So we're gonna have to work with employers to kind of change that mindset just a little bit. And I think those opportunities are gonna open up. And these are the folks that, the aerial linemen and the fiber technicians that build the fiber, put it up, splice it, get it ready. These are the folks that light it, turn up the services, support the end user, and make that experience for the end user the best that they can. They're the ones that are keeping the lights on and services at your home. You know, we couldn't do it without the first 2 steps, but thank goodness Steve saw ahead that we need the next, after the lineman, we gotta have the next folks to be able to run this and turn it up. And yeah, the employers are really excited about it. I've had senior engineers that I've talked to. I talked to a lot of different co-ops and employers and engineers to validate that this is the right program. We're teaching the right stuff. And they did. And they said, Marty, I wish we would have had something like this when I got started. I said, yeah, I know. Me too. But we didn't. Now we do. We got to start somewhere. And this is the first one. And I think, you know, if we can get this out in different places strategically in the state. I know other states are already wanting to do something very similar. I know of 5 other states that are working with the same vendors trying to come up with a similar program. They in very early stages of talking about it, but it may be an opportunity for us to get engaged with them eventually to replicate this program even outside of Arkansas.
Well, that was my next question. Not so worried about outside of Arkansas.
Right.
But in terms of, and I assume you don't want to do it right across the interstate. We don't want to cannibalize, you know, the markets, but is there an area where it makes really good sense for us to replicate it outside of Southwest Arkansas? But then I wanted to go back and ask an entirely separate question, come back to it, but how are you recruiting for the next class? What does that look like? But either order.
Yeah, I'll address the cannibalizing thing. And we've had these conversations a lot. I talked to Tammy a lot, and this popped up with the aerial alignment program. And Marty and I talked, Steph and I have actually talked. You know, you guys, and OSD, obviously the state wants bang for the buck. And you're right, we don't want to create this 20 miles down the road. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What we actually presented this to the broadband group a few weeks back, and you know, several of them, right? They all said, we want this. We want everyone, and that's fine. I love the excitement. But what we said, and my response to that was, well, hold on a second, because yes, we need it, but Marty's working through this first 15 weeks and already has pivoted on some things. In other words, it's not refined yet.
Right.
But what I envision is, and this is just me, and of course y'all do whatever you'll do. But my vision would be get this thing refined to where it's almost perfection, close as we can get. And then when that build up starts in Jonesboro, wherever, pick one, Walnut Ridge. Okay, now we have something we can move to Northeast Arkansas. Just, y'all can't have Marty though, but you can find someone else. But, and then, okay, someone needs it in Gentry. All right, now we move this curriculum to Northwest Arkansas. Because I don't ever foresee a time that there, and maybe in Little Rock or maybe Northwest, that there's gonna be a time where more than 10 or 15 is gonna be needed. Like, you're not gonna need 100 of these at once. And so that's my vision, is to have more of a regional aspect to this, where Little Rock might have this, Monticello might have it, Jonesboro, I'm just calling out names in different parts of the state, to where you end up with 5 programs or so, which would be big bang for the buck for OSD or Commerce. And we're not saying, okay, well, we just started one 20 miles from you guys and now you don't have any, but yet OSD is trying to pay for that and they've got a bunch. To me, that would make sense, but.
And this is important because what Constantine has built here, they have built a curriculum that's been vetted by employers. And they know the tools that we need, they know the curriculum, they've worked out the kinks, and they'll continue to work out the kinks. So when we do need to set this up in Jonesboro, we sort of have this curriculum in a box that we can just say, here it is, here's about what it should cost, and we're ready to go. Unlike some of, like, for instance, our directional drilling, it was millions of dollars to set up. We're not gonna do that in a lot of different places, but this is replicable in a lot of places where there's jobs available. So I'm excited about this, because we can do it regionally.
May I answer the marketing? Sure. To answer the question about the marketing, of course, in addition to your normal, social media, all media outlets and web pages and things like that, we're engaging with the secondary career centers in our area and going in and doing presentations for Rotary and Lions. We're even going in and doing, like in Sevier County, there's an RSAT program where it's a group of select offenders that have received training and are likely to be able to be released earlier to participate in training as well. And we go and do presentations for those groups. And so we've got students that way. That's how the superintendent at one school said, graduation's not to May, but we're gonna release you and let you go to Casatad instead so that you can begin this training program. Really, the grounds on the boots, boots on the ground have been the most effective.
Yeah.
I think.
And
Working with adult ed, of course, as well.
If I may add to this group, because I know this is like important to you guys, but I remember, I've been with you at CASA almost 30 years. I remember when we first started the true secondary career center model. And some of us in this room remember that when we first started that. And I've always said, and I've told Senator English this many times, years ago in Capitol, I think, I'm a little biased, but the best model that we have, we have the workforce model, we've had it, now we're starting to put it all together, in my opinion. But the secondary career centers are to me, the entire linchpin to the whole thing. That's my view of it. I've seen it, and what we're doing in our secondary career centers is getting those freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors involved and getting them into these tracks where they need to be. I mean, I just think they are the absolute best thing this state has, our secondary career centers. I firmly believe that. I've always believed that. I've preached this, and we've always tried to get funding for them wherever they are. I tried to get them in other parts of the state years ago. We didn't have them everywhere. It's like, man, we need one in, Mountain Home. We need it up there because I just see this, that's a model, man. That gets them into this.
Tip of the hat to you, Ross White, and your career centers.
Absolutely. But
I
career
think
centers.
Sheree said something.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Yes, as long as the programs in the secondary centers are demand driven by the industries in that area and in the state. I mean, we know that's really the most important piece of that.
Shree's, everything we do at Costa now, not always true, right?
Right.
We would just create programs. Hey, I want to do this shiny
Because it's
thing.
fun.
Not now. Everything that we do, I'm not speaking for anyone else, everything we do, it better have a Juniper or a Calix or someone telling me I need, I don't need an HVAC local guy telling me I need a guy because I can't create a program to train one guy.
Yeah.
But it is industry driven.
Well,
You're
good
right.
segue to my second question is, I'm sure when you wrote the grant, you had to do the research on demand for the jobs in this field 5 and 10 years out. So do you know that off the top of your head, what the demand is in the state of Arkansas? And then who are your biggest customers? Who's going to utilize your graduates? Who are the biggest markets there that are going to hire the most people?
I don't have the numbers right off on the study, but the electric cooperatives that are doing fiber broadband, even for other providers, we've been working with Windstream. They're interested. The telephone co-ops, they're interested, as well as some of the vendors. Calix is even interested in one of the students right now. as a potential, system engineer in Arkansas, that supports all of their customers. And, other vendors where they can get some help, that somebody can explain the industry a little bit better and how their products play into the industry and go out and help sell them. You know, maybe they don't want to be, one of the students doesn't want to be a hands-on keyboard all the time, but has a good understanding of all this, can go talk it and help out one of the engineers, one in North Little Rock that I know is interested in potentially hiring one of the students.
Are Calix and Juniper the two biggest
They're the two-
vendors
they're
on
the
the
two
market
biggest.
right now?
Yeah, both of them are international companies and have a big, clientele in Arkansas. Most of a good number of the broadband providers use their equipment to do the services to the home businesses. Not everybody does. There's others out there. The Calix is one of the top ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've just got a comment and then a question. And maybe Kyle, this is something that we can work on. There are a number of trade organizations, whether it's the cable association, the telephone companies. We need to get you guys in front of them because to your point, I mean, my company's Northwest Arkansas. We do a lot of our training internally, but I think a lot of this is just unawareness. May not be aware that this is going on, and I've learned a lot today. But between the three programs, I think move the entire program to get in front of those associations. What is the all-in number to stand your program up, and then the all-in number on all three of them?
I'm looking that up right now.
I say,
Yeah, I'm gonna defer to Ms. Stephanie.
Okay, UA, and so UA Casata, the 25 budget. I told you, and part of this was startup cost, right? It was $506,000 is what, part of that is startup. So I believe it would be in the $400,000 range.
But also it depends on, they've been very successful in getting things donated, so
Right.
they didn't have to use.
They haven't used, that was their budget, and they're always under budget at Casata. I love you for that, Steve. The overall budget for broadband is around 1.7 per year.
But that's 5 programs.
Okay,
Yeah, now I talked this a little bit more to that. Yes, we've gotten a lot donated, but the educational opportunities that Calix and Juniper, they go to any of our universities that want to partner. If we replicate this up in Jonesboro, they will give them the same access to their educational material. All right, that's a given. They just are collaborating with the universities to get these programs going. Now, equipment and hardware that was donated, be hesitant that we get as much on as other programs, so if startup costs maybe just a little bit more. But if we can also kind of tie these labs together virtually, we need to look at that as well, how we can leverage our environments to be more efficient in how we utilize these resources.
And Lynn, we would welcome your contacts in terms of getting in
Absolutely.
front of.
so I think they would all be eager to
associations.
hear, yeah.
Anytime after July 28th, or on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, I'm available. Yeah, but no,
I absolutely, this is probably, if you had to think of a concept of what it is we've all talked about for years, is how do we set up a program that really, really is industry driven? That it didn't come for coffee and a donut. They were really there directing all of what it is you're doing. And I think the thing I like the most is, I know it's hard to say how many people are going to be hired over time, but that's probably true for plumbers or electricians or whatever. It's really hard. It's not hard to do Dairy Queen servers, but it would be, if we could have more programs like this that are really industry specific, because I think that sometimes is where we miss the boat, is we don't have sector partnership type things where we're looking at what is really needed in that industry. It's across the board. And we keep doing some of the same things over and over again. But the other side I like too is that you have people there that you've recruited that are not those people that typically would walk into the Department of Workforce Services or whatever. How did you find them? How did they just showed up?
Boots on the ground, like Tammy said. I mean, I forgot how many thousands of students we've talked to.
I
prior
I
to
would
the
have to go back
class.
and see.
But it was a different opportunity for people, and that's kind of what we have to find a way to help people move to a better place in their, not just pay a program.
You know, and these folks couldn't afford to go
Right.
to a school or even go take one of these classes, all right? So it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for them to get engaged and change their career. All they gotta do is invest 15 weeks of their time with me. And they can walk into a $40,000-$50,000 job real quick. And coming from the industry, and I vetted this with the employers I talked to, when they post positions, they get very few candidates in rural Arkansas that are even qualified to be considered. And so when I would hire an engineer, I had to train them on the terminology. I had to spend time with them on the equipment, on how to support this stuff. That took a long time, 3 to 6 months, even a year to really get them acclimated. And we're jump starting this so fast now where employers don't have to invest tens of thousands of dollars and months and months and months of training. Sure, they're gonna have an understanding of the industry, but they're gonna have to get acclimated into that specific employer's environment and understand, you know, how they do things and how they name things and it's built. But that'll come real quick, just having an understanding of the rest of it. So, yeah, I do
They're
think
far ahead.
one challenge we may have is instructors, finding qualified instructors that come from the industry. I'm hoping others might want to semi-retire like I did. I can talk to them and get them involved in this because this is absolutely the funnest job I've ever had. And seeing.
He texts me all the time. He said, look what we're doing. We're watching a tornado today. No, really, he sends me a video of a tornado. His class, they're watching a tornado in progress. And it's like, this is what we're doing right now.
We've gone fishing together, we play pool together, we had a pizza party, you know, I mean, we're just, it's like you would at work. I'm trying to give them a little taste of that, you know, it's not just school and here you go. This is what you're gonna expect, yeah. So building that relationship with them and getting them engaged and, you know, I can see students bonding already and they're gonna be connected for life now. And then, as the industry professionals are coming in, they're like, send me an invite on LinkedIn. You know, and we're getting them involved in LinkedIn and getting those connections made.
I
So,
love it.
yeah.
And I'll just, and Sharice, to speak what you said about what you said a while ago, industry driven. And when I was talking about HVAC and things like that, you know, and I'm glad I'm in this audience because y'all would understand this. Several years ago, Kyle, I don't know when it was, we were in an ACC meeting, Arkansas Community College meeting. And I don't know if it was in the evening, we were having adult beverages, whatever the reason. I just said, I don't know what it was. I just said, you know, because we're talking about, you know, Arkansas, we do need some plumbers. We do. We need some HVAC people. But there's not really any hardly community college out of the 22. There's not any of us that can just say, I'm gonna start that program. Because it's so costly and your instructor is so costly and you're gonna train 2 people and saturate the market. And so we were having this conversation on when it was, I said, hey, why don't we just put together an antique roadshow type thing to where someone buys the training equipment. We all have trucking, it's so easy to get equipment around. And let's have UA Costa have an 8-week plumbing program in my neck of the woods. And then when I'm done training those 2 plumbers, all right, now let's ship that thing over to El Dorado.
And that is being done in several states where they have a mobile training, unit that they're transporting across the state.
Now
in
we've
specific
invested,
areas, yeah.
And we
now
talked
we don't
about
have to
that.
make that huge investment and move that thing around. And again, all the colleges, we all have trucking, load that thing up on our dry vans and move it. And then you just hire an instructor, you're good to go, make it non-credit. And, 8 weeks, 6, whatever it is, get the credential, and move on to the next town. We can do that with so many programs that none of us want to start. I get it all the time, and as chancellor, I say, I can't do that. I can't do a bricklaying class. I can't afford to do it, because you need one, two. Now, that's rural Arkansas.
Yeah.
That's right.
One other thing on the industry educational programs, they've always trained people that come from the industry that want to further their education, specific vendor components. They've never taught brand new greenfield students. So they're having to think a little different on how they approach some of their training curriculum, which is exciting to me. But they're like, Marta, we never trained anybody that didn't.
Yeah.
And, and they'll get people from the industry come into these classes that just, they're not interested in being there. It's like, I gotta go do this. These kids are hungry for it.
Right.
It's a different mindset.
Kids and grandmothers.
Kids and grandmother, I call them kids because they're all a lot younger than
Isn't
me.
it cool though, the makeup of this class?
Yeah.
How cool is
It's
that?
wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what's so, this is my first time ever being an instructor. I kept up, I don't know about, but I wouldn't do anything else now.
True story. He was not gonna come to work for us. True story. This was last year. Of course, he hunts, he's a hunter. And he's up around Bismarck somewhere, wherever he hunts. But Marty's from Bismarck, gotta get that. But trying to get Marty and trying to get him to teach for us and trying to get him to come nice, I tell you what, he said, I've got my eye on a big, I think it was 10-point. I've been watching this 10-point. As soon as I get him, I'll come to work. I think the next day he sent me a picture. He said, I'm ready. That's how we got him. He had to get the deer out of the way first.
I did to the tree. Good job. Well, Marty, thank you for your information. Guys, thank y'all for your time and presentation. We definitely appreciate it, what y'all are doing to grow that field there. So,
Well, we couldn't
thank
do
you.
it without the support of you guys and what y'all's invested in this and your leadership. So thank y'all. This is a great
We're gonna give her the
partnership.
credit for it,
I
so
mean-
she's very supportive of y'all, so.
This is an awesome partnership that with the Arkansas Power Broadband Academy. That's, I think we're gonna make changes in the industry.
Thank you. You guys are welcome to stay for the next part, which is really boring, is rules. But then we're gonna have lunch after that. So please stay and join us.
I will sit through rules for that.
Thank
We've
y'all.
sat through a lot of rules committees. I'll sit, so.
Yeah, I'll hang around.
All right, well, thank you guys. So our next action item is going to be our rules revisions, and Ms. Isaac will handle that.
Okay, I thought this would be a good, the rules are the bane of my existence, let me say first of all. But we have not revised our rules since we started this thing in 2015. So Brian Rogers, who now works for Dr. Childers, developed these rules. Now, keep in mind, Office of Skills Development was established through legislation. It was brought by Senator English in 2015. So we had to devise rules. Now, when we started out, we didn't know what was going to come. So the rules that you see are way outdated. We have been going by some of these rules for many, many, many moons. So I'm gonna go through, you guys can start with the clean version. If you want to, it's easier to look at. I'm gonna kind of go over some of the mark throughs and things that we're changing. The reason I wanna bring it to you, because if you look at legislation, Career Education Workforce Development Board is all over the legislation. It says that we will collaborate with you. It says that you will collaborate with the Governor's Workforce Cabinet. It says that you will approve certain things. So I'm really, a lot of what these rules are gonna do is put a little bit more control for you guys so that when someone doesn't get a grant, they can't just say, well, Cody and Stephanie just don't like us. We can have the full support to know that industry partners actually, our industry leaders, this board, helped make the decision. So, another thing is that our rules had looked beautiful for like almost 10 years, and then we have this new It's CAR. It's a new form of rules, so I'm not as familiar with it. So I'm just gonna start at the top. I thought this would be a good exercise for you guys. And so, of course, it talks about Act 92, establishing Office of Skills Development. So let's go to subpart 1, generally CAR 5-101. The purpose of the Skills Development grants is to, and I say this at every time I go speak somewhere, I say we strategically invest in all levels of the Arkansas workforce, raising education skill levels, meeting the needs of companies operating in Arkansas. Now, we marked out, if you look at the markup version, it said from students to incumbent workers. So we struck through that, and let me tell you why. Because when somebody like a member of the public goes out and looks at our rules, they're like, well, I'm a student, I want to get this grant. So from time to time, we'll just have somebody randomly, some kid, a go-getter who's looking for grant funding to do so, and they'll apply. The grants are not for students. They can benefit students in some cases, but they're for businesses. So we did mark out from students to incumbent workers in 101. We talk about creating a strategic grants program that targets Arkansas businesses and educational institutions and other stakeholders. That would be like associations like ABC and others. It says we incentivize the foregoing to strategically align, partner, and propose solutions. So we're always looking for both our public institutions, our private institutions, as well as our employers to be working together. Now, on C, it says through which the governor's workforce cabinet and its members can proactively work with businesses, educational. Okay, the secretaries make up the governor's workforce cabinet. That's not who is collaborating. So we marked out the governor's workforce cabinet and said through which the Office of Skills Development can proactively work with businesses, educational institutions, and others, just like we did on this project. And keep in mind, when these rules were written, the governor's workforce cabinet was different from what we see today. So it basically says that our office will do that. And then we marked out in B there, again, at the discretion of the workforce cabinet, we said Office of Skills Development, deviations may be made. So the beautiful thing about these rules is it said, here's the rules, but we can deviate when we want to, and we do sometimes. So if we move on to, we've added a new part in here in 102, which is definitions. We may have to add more definitions. Right now, we talk about our grant review committee. So our grant review committee is made up of someone from education, someone from workforce services, someone from ABC, and someone from our office. We didn't exactly define this in the rules because it could change over time, but we just say we're going to have a grant committee made up of various agencies to award the grants. And it just says we added the makeup of the committee shall include representatives of the office as well as representatives from various state agencies.
You were doing this kind of previously, kind of by default.
Yes.
But this is coming up.
Right.
Makes sense.
On eligibility, we cleaned up some language here. Any for-profit or non-profit registered legal entity that has been in operation in Arkansas during the entire 12-month period immediately preceding the date of proposal is eligible. Now, it says exceptions may be considered, and it says entities, and I'll give you an exception. So when AEDC is recruiting someone to come to the state, obviously, OSD grant is in every package. We don't want to recruit a company and say, you got to wait 12 months to get this grant funding. If AEDC is giving you incentives, part of your incentives are going to be this package. So that would be a deviation. And that's why we've got the exceptions in there. We cleaned up the language that said entities applying must be in good standing with the Secretary of State and current on all state and federal tax obligations. And we say must not have any ongoing or pending litigation concerning the company's tax liability. So it did say there must not current, we just cleaned up the language a little bit there. Any trainee must be a United States citizen or legally authorized to work. Trainees must be employed in or otherwise residents of Arkansas. Now we marked out, it did say, or students at an Arkansas institution. again, we took that out because that makes students think that they can apply for the grants for, post-secondary education. So later in the rules, you're gonna see where we specifically, prohibit any post-secondary for credit, training under these grants, because there's federal financial aid and Arkansas Challenge for those. So that's the only reason we marked that out. Let's see that we took out this, and so all the colleges in the room, like, put your hands over your ears. But we did put, it's used to say a purpose of office grants is to increase the capacity of state-supported educational institutions. While we want and we encourage people to work with colleges, the purpose of the grants is not to necessarily increase capacity at community colleges. So that has been marked out. We did put that grant applicants may consider using state-supported educational institution organizations and leverage requested funding to increase the capacity of the same. So it's a good thing. You may do it, but you're not required to do it. We didn't change anything going down the next little bit, but we do talk about, the proposals, what we're looking for. When Brian wrote this, he's an attorney. So if you look down on number 3 under, I guess that would be now G3, it says notwithstanding the foregoing. So we crossed it out. It said at the discretion of the director of, not the governor's workforce cabinet, at the discretion of the Office of Skills Development Director, some training mandated by law, rule, or regulation may be fundable as professional development or grow our own. Okay, now, in our rules, it states that we do not cover training that is required by law or safety. But at my discretion, at the discretion of our grants committee, we have been doing some of that lately, and I'll give you an example, and that's why we wanted to let that be at the discretion of the committee. So there's some safety training called confined space training. It's done by OSHA, and it's for when you're having to go down, like be brought down into something to do some drilling or welding, or if it's basically a confined space, and that takes some extra training, and companies can actually have more revenue. They can drive more revenue because they're able to do these jobs. We thought, even though it was OSHA, it's safety, definitely, we felt like that was good training under these training grants. So that's just an example. But we always in our rules want to say, when we say you can't do training and safety, you can't do things mandated by law, we're always working with the governor's workforce cabinet. And if there's a need and it is mandated by law, we know that we need it to increase revenue in our Arkansas companies, we're going to do it. So said a lot to say, again, we can deviate from the rules when necessary. On the next little bit under, oh gosh, that's why I hate rules. I guess would be number 1. It says office grant funding priorities correspond to AEDC's priorities and targeted industries established by Arkansas Development Commission. We listed those, but we decided to mark those out because we don't need the rules. I mean, the priorities are going to change from year to year. Right now, when we wrote these rules, we didn't even know what a data center was. And now, we are recruiting data centers for the state of Arkansas. So we marked out all of the priorities and just said, we will definitely support, and our priorities will go to AEDC commissions, the AEDC priorities and the sectors. Here's under K, here is where we marked out office grants are intended to support training that raises up skill levels. And we specifically wrote in request from institutions of higher education for funding associated with 4-year degree programs shall not be accepted. So that was due to we had some private institutions, 4-year institutions in the state who had come and asked for funding, and all of their training led to a 4-year degree. So that's a change.
So do you foresee that ever being something that we would want to have flexibility to do? I mean, because that doesn't leave any discretion.
Yeah. And we did, when we were going over these rules, I think we talked about engineers, for example, you know, that's where you have to have a four-year degree, and it might be something that over time the state would definitely look at. And we're going over these rules, but it's all gonna go to the governor's office before it's blessed by them, and then it'll come back to you for actual approvals. So, well, I mean, what does the board think? Or what is, you know, non-voting members are welcome here too.
I just raised the question that there might, do we want the latitude to do that in a particular given case? Cause I mean, I think your edits are just a case in point of saying you couldn't see the future.
Right.
Brian did a great job.
Right.
You couldn't see the future. I just wondered if we don't wanna.
Keep in mind that there is state funding and federal funding for these things, which is why, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't leverage that funding, just like we leverage other funding for things. And so that would be up to, I mean, I'm fine.
It just be worth a little bubble comment, ask the question.
Okay. Bonnie, Renee, if y'all make
Well,
that note.
could you say something, where other funding is available? Just think through that, because you could say requests for funding associated with four-year degree program should not be accepted, or for funding programs that where other funding, state and federal, may be available, will not be accepted. That gives you some, but run that by
Yeah,
your people and think through that.
we'll run that
You
by our
could-
attorneys and. see
Yeah,
if
you
they-
could, because that's really what you're trying to avoid.
Right.
Is you really want to be the last dollar.
Right.
And as we've used, you know, in other situations, where you don't want them to make this their first dollar when they have other funding available to fund that training that's associated with their four-year degree. I mean, if it's a required class in a four-year degree program, then it's eligible for Pell Grant scholarships and other things, you know, y'all know more about that than I
Well, let's
do.
think about it this way. So these are businesses, and so maybe they've got an employee, and they're saying, I want my employee to go get a four-year degree.
Mhm.
And
Well,
so,
just like we heard in this.
right, and so many companies offer that as a benefit to their employee.
Mhm.
And so I think part of this is that we felt like if we open it up, many companies who are already offering this as an incentive would utilize this funding for that purpose.
Exactly, which
so-
would bankrupt the funds and the,
So, but it is a
for
point
other
we're taking.
purposes, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something that we will make a comment out there
Yeah,
and,
it's not meant to be
Scholarship.
a scholarship fund for higher education degrees. That's not what
right,
that's not what this office was
No.
set up to do. Matter of fact, the previous language said to support training that raises skill levels such that earning potential increases. So it was, you know, it was meant, the replacement is this what we're talking about now.
right,
But it was meant that these grants, it's so that you can make more money.
Right.
You're gonna be able to make more money if you have a certification in this, which may or may not be part of your degree program.
One point on that one, just the way it's worded though, doesn't preclude an employer for applying for that. It says request from
That's right.
institutions of higher ed.
That's not.
And institutions of higher ed are not who are supposed to be applying anyway, right? It's supposed to be the
they
employer.
could apply for a skills gap
Yeah,
grant.
they do.
So.
For
and
the
they do.
skills gap,
Yeah.
but for these
Just think,
others,
yeah,
it just,
And,
it doesn't
and
keep them
think through
from
that.
honestly,
doing
this
it.
came because we had a local private university come to us and insist that we should support a four-year degree program.
so they're funding for that, and
Exactly.
that should be first.
Yeah.
Yeah, this should be last.
All right.
Yeah.
Points well taken, we will
Yeah.
take a look at that. All right, so this next part, which is the grant categories. So when we envisioned the grants, we came up with 4 grants. So
Your private.
Lynn, we are on CAR 5-10, no, 5-104.
Okay.
Grant categories. So we had 4 grant categories. We had customized technical, professional development, grow our own, and then skills gap. But over time, we've realized that no company is going to have a skills gap grant. So the skills gap grant, we have kind of turned into what we now consider more of our large scale projects that would go over a longer period of time. They would be for an industry sector or a region. It would not just be, say, ABC company coming up here and saying, I want a skills gap grant. A skills gap grant is going to be led by someone other than an individual company. So we changed now. So our grant categories we have 3 grant categories for businesses. And so we just marked out the skills gap. So now we've changed it to 3 grant categories, which basically are the 3 other than the Office of Skills Development. So if you look down, if you're looking at the markup copy, in the old days, before you could apply for a grant, you had to have a proposal to us before you could even apply as a business. We quickly realized with over 200 companies and this year almost over 700 grants, we don't want to hear from everybody before they apply. So now that the grants have been around for a little while and people know how to utilize them, we marked out all of that you have to have a proposal. There was a lot of language in here. If something is over $50,000, it has to be this and that. If it's over $250,000, the governor's workforce cabinet has to, we took out all of that. So now every company goes onto our grant platform and they have 3 grants that they're eligible for, and our grant committee vets those. So you'll see a lot of markouts if you're looking at the a relatively big change is number 6. In our original grants, it said up to 50% could be awarded for internal training. That's where you have a company training their own folks. So we're basically mitigating the cost of payroll of 50%, and that had really, really gotten out of control. So now our grant committee, just as a policy, we do 25% of internal costs, and we're going to actually put that in the rules, because when people see it can be up to 50%, everyone fights for 50%. But again, a lot of these folks are saying, well, we're going to onboard somebody for the next 6 months. Well, we're paying half of someone's salary and benefits. And we know that they're not training 40 hours a day. So we felt like this was a fair way to do it. So it's now in the rules at 25%. This has always been a rule. And as we migrate to Salesforce, number 7, it'll be easier to keep up with. Proposed project solutions must be implemented and in ongoing mode, if not complete within 3 months of the Office of Skills Development Grants Office affirmatively accepting for awarding. Now, here's the deal. A lot of people, we only reimburse about 60% of our awards. So a lot of people don't ever do the training, or they do it and they forget. So these grants are short-term training. So we're looking for 3 to 6 months is what we tell people of training at a time. So we actually added in under 7A, failure to implement training within the specified time frame may result in the decommitment of the grant funding. Again, with Salesforce, we're going to be able to track that easier and have kind of these guardrails up. It also says grantees who fail to meet the specified project timeline may be subject to repayment of any grant funds received. So you don't have to do all of your training before we reimburse you. So sometimes people get halfway through a training, we've reimbursed. We've never done this. We just want to have it as a caveat that we could do it. So sometimes, and we don't ever forward money. You know, you have to spend the money showing a proof of payment that you've done the training before we reimburse. But if you never finish the project, an example, you have 4 modules, we award you, you only do 1 module, which leads to no certification and doesn't really help your employees, then we could come back and ask for repayment. Honestly, I don't foresee us ever doing that. But I think it just gives a little teeth to these rules. We did add in under number 9 and proof of payment. The reason we do that is because, we knew we had trainers that were not getting paid. We were reimbursing them based on invoices. I was on the honor system. I thought everybody paid their invoices. It came to our attention, that in a certain area of the state, we had a college who was doing tons and tons of training, and they were not getting their payments. And we knew we had already reimbursed the companies. So one day the college said to me, like, we're $200,000, in outstanding payments. And I was saying, but I've already paid these guys. So now we require companies to show proof of payment so that we know our institutions are paid before they're reimbursed. So, it also says that, if you can't get a project started, that it can be extended at the discretion of the director of the Office of Skills Development. I can tell you that happens all the time, because companies, obviously, they're moving at the speed of business, things are happening in the market, they don't get started. That's not a problem. We do that day in, day out. We did just clean up the language about our final report, with our template, and we say we shall require companies receiving grant funds to provide wage information of all trainees. It wasn't in our rules before, it was on our template. So what happens is, we collect on the front end when you're asking for your grant funds, how much are you gonna pay your trainer? But on the back end, we wanna say, here's all the people they trained. What were the wages? Because what we were figuring is that in some cases, we were paying for training for people who were making $12 and $13 an hour. And so we want to make sure that when companies are doing training, that these folks have a good wage, and possible, if there is an increase in the wage, we want to know that. Now, the only time we've ever had any pushback on that is for large corporations. I don't want to name any names, but up in the northwest part of the state where the three biggies are, they don't want to disclose that. It is not FOI-able. So we've never been FOI'd, by the way, at OSD. Nobody's ever said, we want to see all your, if we were, we would redact any proprietary.
Just jinx that.
Yeah. But,
Never say never.
I feel like, some of the, defense, aerospace and defense, Lockheed and Aerojet, we have allowed them in the past to do a range. So they will say $37 to $40 an hour is what they started at. And after the training, now it's $38.50 to $42.50 an hour. So we have allowed them to do a range, but we do require wages. And that was not in our rules, but we just would always say, well, if you don't give us the wages, we're not going to give you reimbursement. So we wanted to explicitly state it in the rules. And just to that point, our friends up in Northwest Arkansas do not utilize the grants because they feel that strongly about not providing this information.
It may be worth checking, not publicly available or publicly disclosed, because I would think that, even with, prospective, companies that AEDC is working with, they're probably sensitive to that information as well. So just, I don't know if there's a way to communicate the safeguards.
Yeah, and ADC collects that information as well, so they've got all that wage information.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, there could be,
but not publicly available.
right, yeah. So we cleaned up the language next about reimbursements have to be submitted within 30 days of the receipt, with proof of payment. Oh, that's saying yes. It says that we will repay within 30 days of receiving the information. It's usually within 3 to 5 days max. So that's not a problem. And if you're looking at the markup version under 10A, we marked out all of the, there's just tons of mark out, because in the old rules, every grant category repeated all the rules. So it had professional development, and then it repeated all the specifications. And so that's just cleanup of that.
Stephanie, I have a couple questions before you move on to the separate categories, because some things that have just come up a lot during our grant review when we're talking about them. One is the paying for travel cost, whether it's limiting that, like there's nothing in the rules that limits that. Is there any appetite to limit that to GSA? I just know how much the state employees we are expected to follow, but I know that they're not state employees. So like, they can't necessarily get that rate. Is there been any discussion to consider that? 'Cause
We
some
may
of it
just
seems
like
excessive.
some policy or specifications, but we don't want to put it in the rules.
Okay, and then the other part is covering travel time. We run into that so much and we often talk about travel time. Is that something that will be in policy? Cause I'm not finding.
We would put that in policy. We don't want to put too much in rules here. Just for the room, every time you change a rule, we're going through this. And we want to, I like to keep the rules as vague as possible. So we will have some policy or what we used to call specifications. I don't know if we have to call them. Remember when we did the specifications? And that would be where if you are awarded travel, then, you know, you will have to go by the GSA rates, and we will not allow travel time. That's something I wish I could educate companies on. So companies from time to time, we got one last week, the training that they were paying this third party for was $3,600. Then they also charged them travel. Then they also charged them travel time. The travel time was $2,030. So they took the hourly, like the salary of the person who got on the plane and sat in the airport and drove to wherever they drove to, was almost as much as the training. So we have it has been our policy that we don't pay training time. We pay for training. We pay for the travel, actual out-of-pocket travel costs. We don't pay for the training. So because we've done that, companies now are negotiating with these trainers to say, I mean, you can build that training time or the travel time into your training costs. I mean, but to you know, for us, as we look at the breakdown of travel, so that will, Tina, good question, but yeah, that will be in our policy or specifications. And to Tina's point, so the people who we send all of this grant reimbursement downstairs to are in finance, and they're used to paying my travel. And I'm saying, boy, I gotta go by all the state rules. And so from time to time, they will send something back up and say, oh, well, they didn't get the government rate, you know, for the hotel. I'm like, well, they're not a government agency, so they're never gonna get that rate. They are a business. They have expended this as a business cost and we're reimbursing them. And we've had a really, because my associate director, Bonnie, pointed out to me that in finance, they're always looking to say no. They're always looking to try to cut costs. And at OSD, I'm always looking to say yes to these companies and help mitigate their costs. So that's, the travel is tricky sometimes, but we will put that in policy.
Thank you.
Stephanie,
Mhm.
just a quick reminder that we are being live streamed through PBS for everybody.
An application, we added in an application for customized technical grants shall be submitted prior to the start of training, but no earlier than 90 days in advance. We added this specifically in because we had companies who would submit a grant maybe right now for next March. And then they wouldn't do it in March. So then it would go over 2 fiscal years. You know what I'm saying? So that was just a little thing. Let's see, we say that we will notify, we added in within writing, within 30 days of the date of receipt of an application. We typically do it in way less time than that. There's a lot of markups. Let's see. This is the next part that's really important. Under what used to be number 8, now is number 3. The level of reimbursement will be a maximum of 75% of the total of actual approved costs for customized technical. That right now is $250,000 per year. Because we have plenty of funding and because we have multiple companies at $250,000, we are proposing to raise it to $350,000 per fiscal year. We have in excess, I think we have at least 7, and that was back in April, companies who they've already gotten their $250,000 in reimbursement, and they're still doing training. So because we have plenty of funding, we are proposing to raise that to $350,000. And we even put in there that at the discretion of a director that we could go above $350,000. In some cases where we have AUDC who's recruiting and we need incentives for certain companies. because that has come up more and more. On the professional development, if you go down to C, professional development addresses the need for basic and soft skills. We did leave some examples of this in here. Right now, that's at 50%. We're gonna leave it at 50%, but the max on that is 50,000. We are proposing to raise that to $100,000 per year. Now, I can tell you, we have dozens of companies in the state who are at their max. So this will allow companies to access more in professional development training.
I'll just dollars aside,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on that category and being and the need and the benefit? Is that?
We see so many companies, when I go to talk to a company, they often bring up professional development. And so they're looking for leadership communication. What's happening is, they're looking to upskill their incumbents. They found a great employee, they want to turn them into a supervisor, and they need this professional development training. That's a lot of what our professional development is. You'd be surprised how many people have to be taught things like communication, conflict management, that's a big one. Microsoft Office. We have people still that we're training for things like Word and Outlook. Because think about it, with an aging workforce, some of the people in the workforce didn't have a laptop when they were in college. They're not working with it every day, and it's important to have that training available. So I feel strongly about keeping it at 50%, because a lot of professional development is delivered by very high cost trainers who are training in excess of $1,000 an hour. So I felt strongly that we should keep it at 50% to keep everybody honest. So that was kind of that's kind of a big change. The next one is grow our own, which, as you know, grow our own. It's just another grant category. It's Arkansas-based company with 250 employees or less. We are going to leave that reimbursement will be 75%, and the quarterly maximum on that is still going to be $250,000 per quarter. And I've missed something. It was back in 106. Are we to 106 yet? And 106 is where I've added you guys. So now we're going to talk about final decisions. It says final decisions regarding all aspects of the Office of Grants program are subject to the Career Education Workforce Development Board. The office and the board have the sole authority and discretion to determine whether a specific use of office grants is reasonable and allowable. I think where that would come in would be if we had some pushback, if we had employers come to us and say, they're denying all of our grants, we would bring that to you guys and you would have that final authority. But here's what I wanted to get you guys to kind of weigh in here on our 5-106 skills gap projects. These are our large scale workforce projects that we do, and they're not through the portal. They come directly to my office. And so these are going to be driven by region and industry sector or workforce segment. It says that I will respond within 30 days. But somewhere in there it says we need to mark out, Renee, if you'll make this note, we need to mark out F there, because the quarterly maximum would not be $250,000 on that, I don't think. Make a note of that. But it says that anything over $2 million would have to come before this board. And right now I can tell you that we have 2 projects that are above $2 million currently that we did without board approval. But I want to make you guys more, I guess, I want your input more on this. So one of the projects is Be Pro, Be Proud. We typically, we give them in excess of $2 million. So in August, they will be here and they will present, their proposal, what their outcomes were last year and what they anticipate them to be. We went back and forth on this, and Cody wanted me to specifically say to you guys, and that's on E, if you're looking, if the amount of skills gap funding requested is more than $2 million, the Career Education Workforce Development Board must approve the application. So in some cases, I would not want to wait for a board meeting. So in some cases, we might have to actually call a special board meeting. The other large-scale skills gap grant we have right now that's more than 2 million was the refrigeration project up in Northwest Arkansas. I don't anticipate the broadband being more than $2 million, which is why I went ahead and brought them before you now, kind of so you have an understanding of that. So I guess I would open it up. Do we want to do less than 2 million? Or is $2 million the threshold? Because I will tell you that we have several over $1 million in our MOUs, and I report to you on them, and we'll continue as we have these meetings, have more presentations like today, so that you have a better understanding where the investments went.
I'd like to open that discussion. Mr. James, you can direct on this too, but I would encourage it being $1 million just for the communication so that we all are able to. I don't think you're gonna get a lot of pushback. I don't think you're gonna get rejected or anything. I think the awareness though on our end would be nice to know. We may have done something 6 months ago that we weren't aware of.
Well, see, it wasn't in the rules, so once it's in the rules,
Oh,
yeah.
well, and that's
Yeah.
the discussion there. I'm not proposing that it's $1 million, but I welcome everybody else's thoughts on where y'all like that to be in terms of what's discussed in this room here.
If I were sitting in your chair, I would do what he said. I mean, there's a lot of.
It's nice to have cover.
That's
It's
right.
Nice to have cover.
Spread it around, spread the exposure around.
Outside the rules, is there any other statutory reference as to our authority in our review? Is there, do we have approval process regardless of the dollar amount? I'm just curious.
In the law, in the statute, it basically says that we will collaborate and you will, it doesn't say you will approve, but it always says the workforce, the Career Education Workforce Development Board has final authority. Now, you guys don't want to do every $3,000 or $4,000 grant that we have.
Right.
But I do think it's important that you have an understanding of the investments that are made and approval, particularly on some of these, and we can move it to $1 million, but keep in mind, there would be some special board meetings because I wouldn't want somebody to have to wait 60 days to start the program.
We've had some Zoom meetings in the past. Was everybody comfortable doing that? Because if it becomes more frequent, I think those Zoom meetings that we've had have been very effective to meet everybody's schedule.
And it wouldn't be a long meeting. It would literally,
Right.
you would have a proposal to study.
Right.
We would have a meeting. It would be a public meeting, and you would vote.
I guess I'd have to.
Well, you can think about it. You can email me because again, we're working on these rules. These are a work in project. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware. So we can make $1 million.
I lean toward $1 million for coverage for both sides. I think it's wise for us to hear more and communicate more, and then that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
You guys, y'all are voting on this too, so I mean, however y'all want to move forward.
If you had to guess, if it were $1 million, how many times a year would we meet beyond what we're doing currently?
Well, keep in mind, I've got a lot of, right now, because it's the beginning of the fiscal year, I've got a lot of proposals in front of me. I would say, on the $1 million, we're probably gonna have 6 to 8 a year. So it's not gonna be like, and a lot of them are gonna, I could bring them to you the next board meeting in August. So what we'll do is we'll change this to $1 million. And again, this could go to the governor's office. The governor's office could just say, no, we don't want the board to be that involved. I don't think they will. I think, because we'll have justification. you know, to why we want this. We want this to be collaborative with the board, because that's what the statute says. You guys have a lot of power. You have a lot of, we have to have this board so we know where to invest. And so if Cody and Stephanie are making all the decisions, and then coming and telling you, then did you really advise us on it, approve it, have final, you know, discretion? So that's why we wanted to put something in here to make us accountable to you as a board.
I would encourage a million, and then we can do more Zoom calls if needed. That's my suggestion, if y'all agree with that.
I could really quickly, even if we call a special board meeting to discuss this, those are also open to the public, and we have to give 3 days
Yeah.
public notice and put out a press release.
Yeah,
Just
it would
make
still be a public
everybody-
meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, so you'd still be on, yeah. Okay, so that's kind of a high level look at the rules. Again, these are a work in process, so if you have any further comments, as we work through this in the August meeting, hopefully it'll have gone through all of the things it needs to go through to get back to us. We'll put together a package to the governor's office.
And, go ahead. And then it goes over to the Capitol. Is that,
Well, it goes out for, see, let me think. It goes to the governor's office, it comes back to you, and then you will have to actually approve the governor's, you know, the final markup.
right,
And it goes out for 30 days for public comment. And if there's no public comment, then it goes to ALC. And then 30 days or 90 days after that? 30 days after that, it would go to the, if everything stays.
And then, you know,
Need a motion for this to proceed, or
We
is
do
this
not.
just part of
We do not.
what we're doing here today?
I just want to make you guys aware. That that's what we're working on. And so the changes were to think about that for your institutions, and also to bring the threshold down to a million.
Well, thank you. Good information.
I'm sorry, just one clarification. Would that apply if they see we're offering OSD training funding as a part of the incentive package that exceed $1 million? Would that require approval by this?
The only way a company could get $1 million, keep in mind, we're talking about skills gap grants here.
Just skills gap.
Right.
Okay.
It's only on skills gap. So for a company, the only way they would get $1 million is if they were a grower owned, which would be an Arkansas-based company of 250 employees or less. So this would only apply to like a skills gap grant. So it's not going to apply to any particular company, which could put some conflicts of interest with you guys.
Right.
in here.
Okay, that's a good point clarification.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We'll move through these next fairly quickly, but old business, just like to bring up, does anybody have anything they need to address from the
One
past?
thing, I have a very quick director's report before that. I have 3 very quick things. I want to, no, that's okay.
I jumped ahead of you.
That's okay. One quick thing, I'm gonna tease out something really big and really special that we thought we could share with you today, is not ready to be shared. So I'll just say that Arkansas has been chosen by the federal government to lead a fairly large project. It should be announced shortly. We'll send out an email to you guys if there's an opportunity for photo ops and things of that nature. So keep a lookout for your on your email for that. Number 2, good news, bad news. Workforce 2000, which is something that we rely on heavily for our funding. It looks like we probably won't get any this year for the Office of Skills Development because of the reduction in corporate income tax, as well as, I guess there was some deferred corporate income taxes. So the forecast is that we won't have any Workforce 2000, which we rely on about $15 million of our funding each year for that. It varies every year, but as you know, we have a large fund balance. So we're able to keep our appropriation, our budget for our appropriation, so it will remain the same next year, around $23 million. So I just want to let you know about the Workforce 2000. And the last thing was, let me think. Help me out here, guys. know I should have written it down. We're continuing to make the SAA transition. So look for, hopefully, to do that by the end of the year. And I guess that's it.
If you want to think about that for a minute, I will make a point of clarification. The workforce $2,000 will continue to go out to the
To the
colleges.
colleges.
But there was an amount over and
24
above
million.
that was designated to be distributed to the Office of Skills Development once it reached that,
The threshold
That-
of 24 million.
threshold. I just want to put that out there so college, that there's no misunderstanding that there is still workforce $2,000.
It's just not
This
coming to
office
us.
will just
So we get the
most
excess.
likely not receive.
Right, we get everything over 24 million.
Yeah, so I just want to say that, did that jog your memory on any?
No,
Trying
I'm
to-
just sworn there was something. I
You're not
should,
talking about the other funding.
pardon me?
You're not talking about the other funding that we passed.
No, we talked about that in our last, if I think of it, I'll let you know. I knew I should have written it down. But I mainly wanted to share that the budget will remain the same though, because of our fund balance. All right.
All right, so old business, any questions, comments? All right, so moving to new business, I would actually like to start with a comment there, for the next chair here is that, Dr. Childers mentioned the mobile site, Senator English mentioned, the industry specific. I encourage that for us to look into that over the next few months and years, is the fact that, very industry specific stuff like we did with Cosita, I think you're right that additional, either sectors or fields can be sought after for that. So just keep that in your mind for how you would reach out for other opportunities there. I think some things might present themselves there, but other new business opportunities, is there anything you guys would like to bring up?
I thought of it, guys.
Oh, let's hear it.
Broadband B funding. So Lynn and I spoke before the meeting. Some of you may have gotten an update from Glenn Howe out of the broadband. Right now, the B funding, the 15 million that we had hoped to use for training with our federal B funding is on hold. And so there's no answers. I have no answers. But just to make Costot and others known in the room, we are going to continue to use our OSD state funding for all of the broadband funding that we hope to use BEAD on, but we'll go ahead and put that budget towards broadband. So we will continue doing what we're doing until we find out more about BEAD, and then we can switch over to federal funding.
Guys, any final comments, Senator? Anybody like to add anything? Okay, well, thank y'all for your time. Thank y'all for being here. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I'll make a motion. All right, a second.
And lunch is out in the hall, so you can circle out, grab your lunch, come back, sit at the table. Friends, join us.